Welcome to the Jazz Age and 1920s culture. This is Melinda Klein. The years following World War I and before the Great Depression, Americans believed it was a time of hope, promise, and of a better future. This decade is remembered as a time of bathtub gin, speakeasies, organized crime rings, and the boyish look to young women's fashions, straight-line physiques, and haircuts. It was a time of prohibition that did not alter American drinking habits. The 1920s brought economic changes for middle-class Americans, but offered little in the way of change to new immigrants, blacks, and Native Americans. Social strains became evident. Examples include the rise of religious fundamentalism in America and the growth of the Ku Klux Klan. Lastly, in the decade in which America emerged from its last legs of isolationism, the gap widened between rich and poor. The 1920s is often remembered as an era of affluence, conservatism, and cultural renaissance. In reality, however, the decade was a time of significant, even dramatic, social, economic, and political change. In this decade, there were intense cultural conflicts as Americans were uneasy with new immigrants after the war. They had questions about national security and the stability of their economy. After World War I, Americans feared the most socialists, anarchists, and the new fascist regimes emerging in Italy under Mussolini from 1922. Success in America depended on many factors, including access to education, gender, and ethnicity. Most Americans did not consider immigrants and blacks contributors to the national economy. Generalizations regarding work and drinking habits bred stereotypes, negative types based on racial origins. American fears of domestic communism, also known as the Red Scare, targeted foreigners, especially Italians, and assumed radicals which hallmarked the decade with the trial in the 1920s of Sacco and Vanzetti. Critics of the trial have accused the prosecution and trial judge of allowing anti-Italian, anti-immigrant, anti-anarchist sentiment to influence the jury's ultimate verdict. During Prohibition, Americans could consume alcohol. However, this law targeted the manufacture, transportation, importation, export, and sale of alcoholic beverages, liquor, wine, and beer. Illegal alcoholic drinks were available at speakeasies in cities and some rural areas. Large quantities of alcohol were smuggled in from Canada and the Caribbean. Urban prosperity in America was evident in a rising standard of living, urban transportation, electricity, and modern plumbing. Millions of homes and apartments were built with the latest in modern living conveniences. Telephones in the 1920s were a novelty and only a luxury until after the Great Depression. From the 1890s in America, corporations merged their businesses to create larger companies in efforts to dominate markets. In 1929, there were almost 2,000 mergers in that year alone. America is a car culture. By 1929, there were 20 million registered cars on American roads. According to advertisers, beauty and appeal were possible if the right products were purchased. Advertising promoted four things, and these sold products and still do today. Number 1, sex. Number 2, freedom. Number 3, speed. And number 4, cleanliness. While marketing companies persuaded Americans with the latest project, by 1922, 40 million Americans made their presence known every week by attending movie theaters. By 1929, the number rose to 100 million Americans each week going to the movies. For the most part, until movies included sound, the moviegoers were blue-collar workers, factory workers, wage labor workers, in general the working class. The Scopes trial of 1925 tested the Butler Act, forbidding the teaching in any state-funded educational establishment in Tennessee, quote, any theory that denies the story of the divine creation of man as taught in the Bible, and to teach instead that man has descended from a lower order of animals. This is often interpreted as a meaning that the law forbade the teaching of any aspect of the theory of evolution. After World War I, African Americans migrated out of the South to urban centers such as Detroit, Chicago, and New York City. During this great migration of the 1920s, many would settle in Harlem in New York City. This became a famous center of African American life in the United States at that time, and one that would have far-reaching influence on people of Africa and people of African descent across the world, as well as American culture in general. The Harlem Renaissance was characterized with racial pride, experienced through the production of literature, art, and music that would challenge the pervading racism and stereotypes from the larger white community of that era to promote progressive or socialist politics and to uplift the race. Americans after World War I did not need to be black to be unhappy in this society. Among white intellectuals and writers, artists, and the like, saw this post-war culture as limiting personal freedoms. Known as the Lost Generation, these writers were disillusioned with American society and its principles. They questioned the meaning of war. They questioned class and racial biases. They lived in Paris writing plays and books, drinking cheap French wine. In the 1920s, women did have more sexual freedoms. Their lives were shaped by their new home appliances and innovations. They entered white-collar work occupations in great numbers, working as telephone operators, secretaries, and typing clerks. In 1928, Herbert Hoover was elected, but within months the stock market crash changed everything from 1929. This president is remembered as not reversing this effect in America. The stock market crash of '29 happened when share prices on the New York Stock Exchange collapsed. The crash of '29 was not the cause of the collapse of the stock market, but revealed the faults and weaknesses within the national economy. By the end of the 1920s, the United States became more involved in international trade, politics, was a leader in finance and business. After World War I, Britain was the leading nation in disarmament, while the United States enjoyed a dominant position as a world power. The stock market crash ended the sense of hope Americans and Europeans had about their future. It was a time of hate and intolerance, of flappers and bathtub gin.